I'd like to now introduce Jenny Downs, who's going to present outputs from the Australasian PWS database. Jenny.
While I find my spot to be able to see the screen, thank you all very much. It's great to be here at this really terrific conference. It is awesome to be at the end of this session. So thank you to the speakers so far. My name is Jenny Downs. I'm from Perth in Western Australia. It says the Telethon Kids Institute. We have just changed names to become the Kids Research Institute Australia. So I am leading a portion of my work is leading some Prader-Willi research where we have worked towards a small database for Prader-Willi syndrome, and today I would like to present some of those findings. So I will describe how we got started and what our aims are. I will summarise, it says there 5, I think I'm going to present 4, a quick summary of 4 of our outputs, and then consider where we might be going in the future. So first of all, our aims. So we started off with a group of clinicians, and I was brought in to sort of bring in a boot to get this study really into action and to achieve its outcome. There was some dithering in the ranks, and so they asked me to join because of my rare disease experience. And we had a study where we had clinicians from almost every state to look at when we introduced growth hormone to young children with Prader-Willi syndrome. We had guidelines for a sleep study before and after the introduction of growth hormone, and the clinicians were saying, do we need to do that sleep study after? So we pulled data from centres around Australia with the team, and what we did indeed find was that enough of a substantial proportion of children still did have or developed some obstructive sleep apnea after their starting of growth hormone, and so therefore we felt that it really was, they did not want to work towards changing the current guidelines we have in Australia. They would stand. But that process was really very nice. We were different disciplines. We had me with my rare disease lens and everyone else with their clinical lenses, and we were really interested and uplifted by the fact that we could work together and pull data. And so we decided we would keep going and see where that would take us. And we set up the database. We have rare disease experience, and we really started our work, I think that says, in 2019. So we're babies in this field. So we set up our aims. We wanted to document natural history, understand variations in treatment and what that means for the children and families, to investigate service needs. I just can't remember what that is, and I think it's yes, we wanted to support community involvement in studies that came up, such as notifying, being able to inform families that we knew about of trials that are coming up, and we have done that on several occasions. We drew a model for what we would want to look like. It would have ideas in common with everybody in this room. We want to understand the determinants for health, for activities, for participation, the child's personal factors and in the environment, and how they map over to the ultimately that what's important to all of us, and especially to families and the children, the child's health and quality of life, parental health and family quality of life, and how can we address those issues in a way that are efficient for our society, the healthcare needs. So who is involved? We have clinicians and we have researchers. You can see a list of the states and the organisations who are currently involved in this. We have a consumer reference group. It varies from 6 to 8 parents at each meeting. We meet twice a year, and they are gorgeous meetings. We talk about our work, we talk about how we're planning an analysis, how we're interpreting analysis, and each of the the meetings are also work towards how we can disseminate our information back to the community. We have a steering group which is much less active, but that's there. So our processes are that we are recruiting via clinician referral or through advertising. Anyone can join this database. We have the clinicians ask parents in clinic, are you interested to know more? And if they are, can I share details with me at Telethon Kids, and then I can contact them. We keep the consenting separate to clinical care. It is not part of clinical care. It's a separate activity that parents can choose whether or not they want to join. I ring, and if they're interested and some aren't, then I send a link to our questionnaire. I'll move out a little bit more. And we have an online consent process. We have the option for mature minor consent, and several families have done this with their older child. And we ask if we can, with our consent process, it is consent to be in the study, contact about future studies, and also share de-identified data with an ethically approved study, and so forth. So we collect data on REDCap, and at the moment we've had contact with we've got contact details for nearly 90 families, and I've spoken to most of them. I haven't managed to speak to all of them, and we have completed questionnaires back from about 64 at this point. So that's about a 70% participation fraction. The most participants come from WA, Queensland, and New South Wales. So, summary of some of our outputs. We first looked at the relationships between child behaviour and parental health. We have published this paper, and at that point, ignore the 46 at the top, we had 50 completed questionnaires. The average child age was around 11, and our outcome was the SF12 scores for mental well-being and physical well-being of the parent caregiver, and our independent variables were the behaviour by the developmental and behaviour checklist, sleep, and hyperphagia. We noticed that those three independent variables were very highly correlated. We could argue that the concepts, there is overlap between them. Some of the items are in common between these different concepts, and it might be that one exacerbates another, and it might be that there is a similar mechanism. So we opted to do 3 separate models. And I think this really important exploring of how different concepts are related to each other is really important, so that we get our statistics as close to right as we possibly can with all available data. What we found is that behaviour was the strongest predictor of the caregiver's mental health. There were less precise relationships, positive associations, but not very precise. The confidence intervals spanned the line of no effect for sleep and for hyperphagia. For physical health, on the other hand, both behaviour and the child's sleep-breathing disorder were both strongly predictive of the parent caregiver's physical health. So the second summary I would like to present is about the child's behaviour, and we are very concerned with 2 sides of the coin. Every discussion I hear in talking to families at the Consumer Reference Group at this conference is not about the deficits of Prader-Willi syndrome, it's about the enormous strengths. And so we really wanted to look at that in our data. So we looked at our developmental behaviour checklist data, and we also administered the 2 questions that were way back in the original versions of the questionnaire. You know, what are your child's strengths and what makes you proud? And parents filled those in, and that was the best data we really collected. So we scored the questionnaire and compared our scores to the literature, and we used a qualitative analysis to analyse those 2 answers to those short questions. So nearly half of the children had scores of the developmental behaviour checklist that would indicate problematic behaviours. That is what we would expect. And when we compare that to use of this measure across the literature, we have very similar scores in our group. What we also found with our qualitative data were the enormous strengths of the children that resolved into 3 themes. I can't actually read that, but I think it's warmth, persistence, I think, or resilience, and skills. And we've turned this into an infographic, one for my daughter and one for my son, and have sent that to parents. So there is a value in seeing the two sides of the coin in all arguments. Thirdly, we looked at daytime sleepiness and behaviour. We had 54 completed questionnaires for this database. We measured the sleep with the paediatric sleep questionnaire, in particular the breathing subscale, the Epworth sleepiness scale, and also the developmental behaviour checklist again. And in that analysis, we found that the daytime somnolence was a strong predictor of the child's behaviour. It accounted for 29% of the variance, which is a very high amount of variance, so a strong relationship. And we adjusted for the adequacy of the number of hours the child was sleeping at night, the breathing subscale, and also, I can't remember what's there, but there's a third factor that we adjusted for. So we found that relationship. We also hypothesised that there would be a moderating relationship between the child's BMI and their behaviours, the relationship between sleepiness and behaviour. There was no moderating relationship. You can see the bottom right-hand graph is showing two parallel lines. So for higher and lower weight children, the relationships were the same. But for children who were younger, we saw a much more steeply inclining line showing the relationship between sleepiness and behaviour, and the children who were older than 12 years. So here we have an age effect. We were very excited about this. We wrote a grant submission to the International Prader-Willi Syndrome Foundation to explore the experience of daytime sleepiness in detail, to understand what are the best outcomes for this phenomenon, and also to understand and collect data at another time point so we could see what was happening longitudinally. But I'm afraid the pitolisant trial was in progress. We hadn't realised that. We had realised there was small case series data, and really we probably were beaten in that regard. But it is very interesting data that is part of the background now to that trial. And finally, we have been a part of, as a group, us at Telethon Kids and other clinicians, in developing or writing a booklet for parents from the ANTSPED My Hormones and Me series. I think there are 13 booklets. 7 have been added or updated this year, and Prader-Willi syndrome is one of them. So there is the link. It's freely available. We worked with our consumer reference group to put that booklet together, and so their voices are in that book very strongly. So finally, where are we going? I met with the group to talk about how we can link data from the different sources. In Australia, we have something to offer, because from everything I'm hearing, I didn't know of the existence of all of the other initiatives, but we have different strengths and interests, particularly with parent-reported data and qualitative investigations. So we'll see where we can go with that space in this collaboration. We're keen to understand more about natural history, and we have a new younger than 3 questionnaire for little children 6 months to 3 years: eat, sleep, play and breathe. And it's a lovely questionnaire that we hope will yield important data, and how we can connect families in with studies, as everybody else wants to be doing. And particularly, there has been a very loud call in my work for systematic advocacy and training, particularly in schools and with police. And so we really need to build resources in that regard as well. Thank you to all of the parents. Our consumer reference group and our 2 sources of funding have come from Western Australia, and I thank them. Thank you.
Thanks. I might have time for one question if anyone has a burning question. That's it. Yep, I got one. I think it might be a collaboration question.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, for some of those variables, is it based on one-time questionnaire, one-time points, or several or multiple questionnaires?
At the moment, it is a cross-sectional study. Yes. So cross-sectional. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. That was really outstanding as well.